Please turn in to Luke chapter 9. This is where we'll spend our time today. I can only speak for myself here, and maybe I'm speaking for others, I don't know. But one of the most difficult things about walking in this fallen world as a follower of Jesus is not so much the catastrophic things that come, but more so just that day-to-day grind of just having to try to live for the Lord when you go to get a glass of water and you drop the glass, or you go outside and you're in a hurry to go somewhere and there's a flat tire, or you find a leak in the roof, or whatever it is. These constant things that just, every day is not every day filled with something like that, where we just find ourselves struggling to not use colorful metaphors as we encounter those things when we come to them, right? It just feels good sometimes to use the colorful metaphor because it just feels good to get it out. We're so mad that these things just keep chipping away at us, and it never seems to stop. And I want to look at a text today where that chipping away came to them as disciples, as followers of Jesus on this particular day. So if you would, look in verse 37. This is where we begin in chapter 9. The next day, when the disciples and Jesus came down from the mountain, a large crowd met Jesus. And a man in the crowd called out and said, "Teacher, I beg you, Lord, to look at my son. He's my only child, and a spirit seizes him suddenly, and he screams. It throws him into convulsions. He foams at the mouth, and it scarcely ever leaves him and is destroying him. I begged your disciples to heal him, but they could not." Jesus says, "O unbelieving and perverse generation, how long will I stay with you and put up with you? Bring the boy to me." And even while the boy was coming, the demon threw the boy down on the ground in a convulsion. But Jesus rebuked the evil spirit and healed the boy and gave him back to his father. And they were all amazed at the greatness of God. While everyone was marveling at all this, Jesus' disciples as well, he said to them, "Listen carefully what I'm about to say to you. The Son of Man will be betrayed into the hands of the authorities." But they did not understand what this meant. It was hidden from the disciples, and they didn't grasp it, and they were afraid to ask him about it later. So they've just come from the transfiguration, as it's called in your Bibles. That is the place where they went up on the mountain. They saw Jesus completely changed. They saw Jesus in the way that he really is. All of the glowing and the color of lightning in his clothing. It was just an amazing moment. They do that. They spend that time. You remember Peter said, "Hey, let's build 3 tents and just stay here. This is really good." And then they had to come down the mountain. And what did they find when they came down the mountain? I'll tell you, for me, this little image here of what they experience is what I call the vacation syndrome. I don't know. For me, vacations, and it's a good thing Becky's not here, because if she were hearing me say this, she wouldn't be very happy. Vacations are really good for her. But for me, they're not. And I'll tell you why. It's like a drug. I get on the vacation. I'm like anybody. I like going someplace new and doing stuff that for fun. Wake up when you feel like it. Read till you fall asleep. Go fishing. Go ride in a boat. Go to a shop and look at stuff. Read again. Maybe watch some music videos or something that I don't have any schedule in front of me. I can just do whatever I want. I got a whole week to do it. And then I have to come home. I have to come back to the same stuff that I've been dealing with, and I'll go into that in just a moment. But it's like, don't we have that saying, all good things have to come to an end, right? And they do. And we hang on to them. My wife hangs on to them tremendously, and I do too. I'm thinking to myself, oh man, there's only one more day. And of course, in a vacation, I don't know what it's like at your house, but in my house, the day before you leave, you work harder than you work at anything else your entire life for 24 hours getting ready to go. You go on a vacation. For the first 4 or 5 hours you're there, you're working just about as hard as you did before you left. But then you got that period in between where you don't have to do a lot. But then it's time to go. You got to work really hard and put everything back and get it ready to go back home. And when you get home, you've been driving for however long, you're tired, all you want to do is lay down, and you got to unpack everything. So there's a problem at the bookends of the vacation. All good things have to come to an end, but we hang on to that middle part, and I think we hang on to it because we're remembering something. I don't think it's because we're just looking at the vacation. I think we're remembering the garden. There was a time in human life when there were no needs. And there was a time when everything was as it should be. And things didn't break because there was nothing to break. And we were living in a place where all of our needs were met by the world that God had given us to have. But it's not like that anymore. And I think we remember that. You know, I look at people who do things to gain, for instance, somebody who's knocking off 7-Elevens. Why are they doing that? Is it just because they're bad? I don't think so. I think because it's easier. There's a part of us that wants that. We want the easier, right? I mean, look in our homes. I don't know anybody in this room that goes out and with a couple of rocks at the river and washes your clothes with a rock, you know, at the riverside anymore. We've got a washing machine now, right? I use mine all the time. And we've got a microwave. And we've got all these conveniences. They're there because they inch us just a tad closer to what we remember as the garden. I'm convinced it's just built within us. We remember the garden, and we remember the garden so much that we're willing to do anything to create as much of that as we can right now. That's why we take vacations. Do you ever wonder what about a vacation? Isn't a vacation a weird thing? We leave our homes to go to an unspoiled place to have a vacation. Why do we choose to live in a spoiled place? What's going on with that? What are we thinking about that we see that distinction between spoiled and unspoiled? I guess because home reminds us that we've got things to do that are a lot bigger than just sitting around and watching videos and reading till we fall asleep. Or fishing until it's too dark to see, or whatever it is you like to do or I like to do. Those things that we do for refreshment, we want to hang on to them because there was a time when all of life was a refreshment. And it's not like that now. And even when we achieve stuff in this world, you know, the disciples just came down from the mountain. They saw all that stuff. They're confronted with this messy, dirty, dangerous world just like that. I think about people who achieve great things. There was a guy who wrote a book a few years back. There are only 12 people that have walked on the moon. Did you know that? Out of the whole human race, 7.5 billion people, and there are 12 people who have put their feet down on the moon. And one of them said to an author, he said, "I'll never forget, we went all the work to get there, the rocket, the orbits, the trip. We get there, we step out on the moon. I'm looking at all of this and I'm thinking, wow, I'm standing on the moon." And within just a few minutes, the thought occurred to me, is this it? Is this all there is? Jean-Paul Sartre, the atheistic philosopher, said this, and I think he's exactly right. There comes a time, now you may not like Shakespeare and Beethoven, so think of the thing that you like the very best in this whole world. If you could imagine your life on this earth in the very best way you could imagine it. And Sartre says this, there comes a time when we ask even of a Shakespeare or a Beethoven, is this all there is? I think that's so true, don't you? Is this all there is? This is what it must have been for the disciples. Imagine what it would be like to see something like this. I mean, there are a lot of people who say, if I could just see that, I would believe all this stuff. I'm thinking, well, maybe. In our day of YouTube and everything else, I don't think so. I think somebody'd say, is that real? But if you were there, I were there. That would be a life-changing thing. And I don't think the Bible really captures it. This poor writer, Luke, or whichever of the Gospels you read that records the Transfiguration, his clothes became like lightning. That's the best they could do. I would imagine it was more spectacular than that. That's just the best they could come up with. But it would have overwhelmed anybody. And I think even a hardened person who just was not going to believe would have at least thought, you know, this Jesus guy, he must be somebody kind of special. I mean, look at what we've just seen. This moment has parallels too. This transfiguratory moment in Jesus. Elijah saw stuff like that. Moses saw stuff like that. But think about them. Elijah, if you go into 1 Kings 18 and read the account where he deals with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, remember the story. He says, let's decide who's God, right? Let's figure it out. Today's the day we're going to show who God is. You, prophets of Baal, build an altar. Put your sacrifice on the altar, and then you just do whatever you have to do to get your God, Baal, to come down and consume the altar. And the God that answers by fire, he's God. So they dance for 3/4 of a day. They cry out. They cut themselves with potsherds in order to try to draw blood so that they can prove to Baal that they really want Baal to do something. They do it all day long and nothing happens. And then Elijah just walks out, and he's got his altar. He's got the bull on it, and he's poured water over it, and so much water that it's filled a ditch around the altar. And all Elijah does is say, God, hear me. And the fire comes down and consumes the whole altar. Now, if I were Elijah, I'm thinking to myself, man, that would convince me. I would be willing to go out and pray for anybody after that. Preaching or doing anything for God, I wouldn't be afraid of anything. Stick me in front of the firing squad. The bullets won't hit me. Look at what God's just done. That would have been my thinking. But Elijah, what does he do? He runs away and hides from Jezebel and's in a cave and asking God to take his life. What's going on? Moses the same. God shows up in the burning bush, does all these miracles, and what does Moses do? He says, God, I can't talk very well. You need to send Aaron along with me so that he can speak for me. What is going on with us? There is something in us that the most faith in the world just will not conquer. It will not overcome it. It will not overcome who we are. And there's a part of us that's filled with fear and selfishness and all the things that come with it. You and I will come down from a mountain over and over and over in our lives, and we will find, as the disciples did that day, the demonized boy. That's the way it is. That's the way the world is. This is not an accident that this happens this way. Think of what it would be like to be free from that. Wouldn't that be awesome? To just go on vacation and think, it's never going to stop. I'm going to stay on vacation forever. Jesus lived like that. That's how Jesus experiences the world. He sees the things that are in this world, but his internal experience of the world is a person who's set free, so free that none of the world's things can touch him. I think that's what we're looking for, honestly. We're not looking... the reason we want to be out of what we're living for or living in is because we don't know how to live in it and be free living in it. Jesus did. He was able to just walk through this messy world in a way that we just can't understand. I remember one time we went on vacation. We had one of those really good ones in the mountains. Becky got this thing where she was finding these incredible houses for us really inexpensively. We couldn't go to Fernandina nearly as cheap. And we could go to this place right on the river, the Toccoa River. Where the water looks like you took it out of a drinking glass. You can see right down to the bottom. You see these trout swimming around in there this long. For Jackson, that was just heaven on earth. He could throw a pole all day long out there and catch fish. Awesome vacation. We got in the car, we did all that packing up thing, and we came all the way home. What did we find? This was in July. We walked into our house, and it felt just the same inside as it did outside because the air conditioner had quit. So the whole week we're gone, and we come home to that. These disciples, they see this incredible thing. They come down the mountain, and the first thing they're confronted with after this incredible moment is this demonized boy. And the father complaining that the other disciples who didn't go up couldn't help the little boy. It's like being addicted to something almost for me. to go on a vacation and to just think, man, if only this could just last. I just don't want it to stop, but it's going to stop. And I'm going to come back to those things that chip away at my life and my ability to live this life in a peaceful way. That's just the way the world is. But Jesus offers us something different. And he offers it to us, and all we have to do is take it from him. He offers us a place wherein we can live in this fallen world with all of its difficulties, but we can live in it in such a way that these difficulties do not crush us. They don't create for us this sense of, I've just got to get away. I can tell you, if I were the disciples that day, and I'd come down the mountain, and I were confronted with this little boy, and I'll just admit this, I would be exasperated. I'd be thinking, come on. I mean, is this what we've got to do now? Look at where we just came from. Look at how nice that was. And now we're confronted with this. But you know, there's a part of us that we're built for this stuff when you think about it. Think about it this way. If a person becomes utterly sedentary, they aren't getting up and doing anything, what happens to our bodies? Stuff starts to break down, right? We're not built for that. We're built, I don't know if you ever thought about it this way, you and I are built to resist gravity. Did you know that? Just to resist gravity, just to sit up, stand up, move against the pull of gravity. That does good things for our body. We're built for that. But it feels really good to lay down, right? We need that too. We need both things. We're built such that our bodies are geared up to resist gravity, but they're also geared up such that we need that time of rest. Gravity is relentless. It never stops. I don't know if you ever think about it like that. Have you ever thought about, when I was a kid, this is crazy, and probably if I tell you this, you'll think I am crazy. But when I was a kid, I used to think to myself, why should I keep breathing? Do I need to think about breathing? In other words, do I need to tell myself to take the next breath? No, it just happens. But there's an effort involved in it, right? There's a little effort. There's a little effort in me just standing up here. There's an effort for you all to sit up right now. We're built for that. But then we can't live without the time of refreshment either. When Jesus responds to everybody here, he calls them a perverse generation. I think, man, I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to say that to anybody here today, because of course I'd be part of it. But I wonder if we understand what he's getting at. Could it be that he had given those disciples who were there trying to deal with this demonized boy everything they needed? Remember, they'd just come back from, like Elijah, going out and doing incredible things. They had cast out demons. They had healed the sick. They had done all these amazing things. And yet they came to this moment and they couldn't do anything. Why? They just forgot who they were. They forgot who they were. They forgot whose they were. And all of a sudden they were depending on themselves and not depending on Jesus for what it was they were being asked to do. And I think that's how we are. I think there's a reason that when you and I live in this world, we get chipped at day in and day out. No big catastrophes, just that constant chipping away. The reason is because it helps us to forget whose we are. That's why. If I can be made to look at the fact that the tire's flat and I'm in a hurry, and if I can be made to look at the fact that I just popped my shoelace and I got somebody waiting for me in the car outside, if I can be made to look at the fact that the air conditioner's quit, or the washing machine won't run, or the microwave's broken down, or the stove won't turn on, or whatever it is, if I can be forced to look at that, I'll forget for a few minutes whose I am. And all of a sudden, life looks awfully flat and empty. And all of those things that have chipped away at me have been successful because they've taken me away from whose I am. God puts us in this world with certain needs, but also with certain capacities. And he gives us to know the fact that no matter where we walk, no matter what we face, no matter what chips away at us, that He is with us. We're never going to go through any of those things alone. God allows those things to come, not to hurt us, but to give us an opportunity to be reminded, just like when the vacation ends and the little boy who's demonized shows up, that He is using those things to build us into people we could never be if we didn't face them from time to time. And look, those things that chip away, are they bad or are they opportunities? All depends on how you look at them. Jesus, we're all His disciples. That's what we're called to do and be on this earth. And you and I are going to be confronted with moments wherein the little chipping hammer is going to come out, and it's going to take away from us that sense of whose we are. And when it happens to us, that'll be the moment when we yell at our spouse, or yell at a child, or the colorful metaphors flow, or whatever it is that we do in reaction to it. But the other side of it could be, it's an opportunity for you and me to have a moment where we win, because God wins in us. We're changed people, and it shows. I tell you, that's what people are looking for in this world. They're not looking for you and me. They're not looking to be lifted out of the trouble. They're looking for people who can live in it and be different. And we can, because we've been empowered to do that, just like these disciples that day. They just forgot. They forgot who they were. I don't know